Right, we're gonna see who's gonna jump on here. Busy charging up some batteries here for a van build. Actually running some tests here. We building out a new battery. We've got a a new van that we bought last week or the week before. We're going to get into the workshop in the next couple of weeks and get cracking on that. It's going to be what I'm working on over the next month or so, getting that converted into a camper. So pretty stoked for that. It's a medium wheelbase Nissan van, so it looks pretty good. It's going to make a great camper. Alright, can you guys hear me alright? These chargers are so loud. Busy charging up this battery. I've been running tests for the last few days, so yeah, we busy testing out this active balance here that's on the desk here. It's a little Delhi green. I've spoken about it in previous lives over the last couple of weeks. See if I can unpick it between all these cables. But yeah, I had some faulty, or I had some issues with this balance on this battery a few weeks ago. I got two of them initially from the Chinese company, and they were like smoke. Like I connected them up to the battery, and they just started smoking, and it was super weird. There was definitely something wrong with that balancer, and so I sent it back to the company in China, and they replaced them both. The two that were faulty, that were smoking, replaced them with a new set, put one of them onto the battery in my camper, and it's been working fine, and it's been great for the battery in my camper. But this one here has I just don't think it's working. I don't think this one's working. Because what it's meant to do is you have these 4 cells that make up this battery, and they're all connected, but each of them kind of depletes or charges at a different rate, that sort of thing. And what it's meant to do is level them out so that they all go down and go back up at the same time. But it doesn't appear to be doing what it's supposed to be doing, so I think I'm going to have to get hold of the company and just tell them that they need to revisit the drawing board, I think, because yeah, that's I haven't had much luck with this product working. So yeah, the test we've been running this week for this battery is to see if by having the active balancer, if it makes a difference in terms of the capacity. So in theory, the trouble that you have is if you don't have an active balancer when you're drawing power from your battery, so when you're discharging it, if one of the cells is slightly weaker than the others, then it'll discharge that one faster than it will the others. And this device here, the BMS, what happens with that is as soon as one of the cells reaches a certain threshold, so if it reaches a certain voltage that you set in the parameters, the BMS will cut off and stop anything from drawing power from the battery. And so the idea with having the active balancer is that if you have a weaker cell, then it's not depleting the battery, that cell, faster than the rest, because then what can happen is if you have all 4 cells there, if that cell is being depleted faster and the others aren't, then potentially the BMS can cut the battery off before you've used up the capacity in the other cells. And so that's the idea behind having an active balancer, is that in theory it should, because it's depleting the cells at the same rate and then therefore charging them at the same rate as well, it should give your battery more capacity, because you don't hit that low voltage disconnect that your BMS cuts it off to protect the cells, or to protect that particular cell that is that's weaker per se. So I don't think I necessarily have a cell in this bank of batteries that is weaker than the rest. So sometimes you get lucky and you just get 4 that are really evenly matched in terms of their performance, capability, capacity, and the resistance inside. And I think I've got a pretty good set here that are pretty well matched. But it's still, there's still a bit of a delta, and granted it's not very much, like you're talking probably like millivolts, really tiny amount of difference between the cells. But yeah, it is is meant to make a difference. Is it bad that my camper batteries are pretty much always at just under 100% lithium iron phosphate? No. Well, so the general consensus is that you should use a window of between about 15% state of charge to 95% state of charge. So that gives you kind of an 80% window that you should be using. And the main consensus with that window is that if you don't charge it to 100% and you don't deplete it below 15%, you get more cycles out of your battery and they may last a bit longer. But the thing with lithium iron phosphate is that you're talking about many cycles anyway. So like these cells that I've got in front of me here, these are rated at I think like 3,000 cycles. And so when you consider that even if you're living in your van full time, that's going to take you 10 years or thereabouts to actually go through those, because you're not going to use a cycle every single day. You're going to have days that you'll probably run most of your day just off the solar, if you have solar, that sort of thing. So I think that's and so if you clamp your cells, and if you're quite careful, and let's just say you're able to eke that out to like 3,500 or 4,000 cycles, then potentially you can get well over 10 years. And my view on it personally is that I have the threshold for mine set at 10%, and I charge all the way to 100%. I don't stop at 95%, mainly because in my opinion, I reckon in 5 years' time, I'm going to want to upgrade whatever batteries I have in my camper to the latest technology. And the stuff is moving so fast now because of electrical cars and things like that. The likes of Tesla and that, who are really pushing the innovation of these batteries. I think we're going to see the technology of these batteries advance so fast that I think a lot of people that are trying to conserve the battery life and have their battery last them 12, 15 years or something, I don't think you're going to want to use the same battery. It's like me with lead acid now. I'm like, now that I've used lithium iron phosphate, I couldn't think of anything worse than putting a lead acid system back in my camper. I absolutely love the chemistry of lithium iron phosphate. And I think that's going to be the same for us in 5 years' time when we have newer, better technology and stuff. I think we're going to be in the same boat where we're going to want to have the best technology out there. And also the other thing to bear in mind as well, we've been studying this a lot over the last couple of weeks, just in terms of the actual cost. So everyone's sort of thing with lithium iron phosphate is always the cost of the batteries is so high compared to lead acid. But the trouble is that it's like comparing apples with like carrots. They're completely different things, because your average lead acid, flooded lead acid, on the spec sheet say that they should do about 200 cycles, whereas your average lithium iron phosphate is probably doing 2,500 to 3,000 cycles. So it's like 10 times the number of cycles, but it's not 10 times the price. So if you were to replace your lead acid every 200 cycles, by the time you get to having put 10 lead acids into your van, you won't have matched the same price as your lithium iron phosphate. Should I set my charges to only charge them to 95% maybe? Yeah, I mean, I think they will last slightly longer if you do that. If you set the threshold to stop charging at 95% and then put your low voltage disconnect to 15%. So if you just work that out, if you just check the curve of your battery, so your discharge curve, if you get it, they call it the knees, which is the bit where it really drops off. So with lithium iron phosphate, you've got a very flat curve, so it goes from like 14.6 volts or whatever it is, drops down to probably about 3.7 volts fairly fast, and then it's really flat for a long time, and then it really drops off quite fast. And so most BMSs will, I think they default to somewhere like a low voltage disconnect of being like 2.5 volts, so somewhere around there. But if you just work out the the other thing with the BMS as well is that I'm assuming you have a BMS and not like a fitted battery like a Battleborn or something like that. what's the tumble dryer in the table? So this is actually a charger. It's a power supply unit, so it's like a you have these dials here just where my finger is, and you can adjust the voltage, so you can set it to charge up to a certain voltage. So I've got these two, I'm running two of them side by side. You can see here these two cables, these two crocodile clips are connected to the positive terminal on this battery, and then here are the two negatives I've got connected to the cable that comes out of my BMS. I'll just turn this camera a bit so you can see it a bit better there. Yeah, there we go. So here's my BMS. I've got the cable coming out of there to these two crocodile clips here, and these are just chargers. So the top dial here, this is my voltage, and because the camera is reversed you can't really see, but it's 13.75 I think it says there. So it's got a little way to go before it gets, I've set these to charge up to 14.6 volts. So that's the maximum that this battery bank can take before you start damaging the cells by overcharging them. And I think the BMS would cut off if I went above that anyway. I think that's what I've got the BMS set to do. This one here, the middle dial, that is the current that it's charging at. So with this you can set the dials to adjust whether it's charges at a constant current, so constant amperage, or whether you just, if you max out the dials, then it'll just charge based on what the battery's telling it. So the charger will pump as much current as it can while the battery is depleted, and as it starts getting to its maximum voltage that you've set up here, so when I start getting close to like 14.4 volts and up from there, you'll then start to see the amperage dropping quite a lot, until it gets to 0 amps on this middle screen here. And then you know that the battery is fully charged, and then the top one will then read 14.6 or whatever I've set it to. But yeah, it's just a standard desktop power supply. And there's a few guys that will argue that you shouldn't use just standard power supplies for charging lithium iron phosphate, because you should use a proper charger and things like that. But I know a lot of people that charge lithium iron phosphate with a standard power supply like this, and it's not a problem for top balancing or just basic charging like this. The big issue is that a lot of people will use a charger that's designed for another type of battery, like they'll use a charger that has charge profiles in it for lead acid or something like that, and that's where you can damage these batteries if you start having those sort of things, just because of their charge cycles in terms of the voltage that they charge at and how the curve works and stuff like that, and the charge profile is not optimal for this chemistry. So and it's actually something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to converting a van to lithium versus if they've just had like lead acid or something like that previously, because a lot of guys don't realize that some of the older chargers that you may have installed you won't be able to use for lithium iron phosphate. They may not have a charge profile in that charger that's built for this type of battery. So it's always very important to make sure that you have the correct profile in your charger when you convert to lithium. And so when you see these guys that are advertising lithium batteries that are just drop in, that you don't have to change the charging systems or anything like that, sometimes you just have to be a bit wary of those sort of things, because sometimes the batteries are better, they last longer, and it's better for them if they have a charger that's built for that chemistry, for that profile. But even going back to what I was talking about earlier, even when you factor in the replacement cost of putting in a lithium system into your camper and a charging system that's optimal for lithium batteries, even when you factor in the cost of those chargers over the lifetime of a lithium battery versus the number of replacements that you have to do for lead acid or AGM, the lithium battery still comes out cheaper if you do a DIY like this. Even if you go for a ready built lithium battery like a Battleborn or something like that, this will still come out cheaper when you factor in the lifetime of the battery, say 10 years or something like that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm going to do, with this test, I'm going to be doing one more test, probably set it off tonight, because this is not far off being fully charged here. So I think this battery is somewhere around 94%, something like that. So we'll probably, even potentially on this live, we may start seeing the voltage dropping, the amperage dropping on these chargers. And we may then see the battery coming to a full state of charge. And then I'm going to set off another test running, one more test on this, just to see how we do with this active balancer, see if it makes any difference. And this is the tester that I'm using. So it's just to see if I can untangle all these wires here. So it has this little fan that spins on it, and then it's got a bit like an element inside there that just draws power, just heats up basically the fan and then cools that down. And then it's got a dial here which tells you information that you want to know, like how many amp hours you've drawn from the battery, at what current, and then what the voltage is of the battery and stuff like that. So yeah, busy testing this battery out. We've just been testing out another battery system as well, over in our England workshop, and that's been really good results. I posted a video on here earlier, just with some of the results from that test, and it's turned out really well. So we're pretty chuffed with that. It's fortuitous because we have a stock of those cells coming over from China as we speak, so they should be with us in the next couple of weeks. And so we'll get building some of these batteries, and we'll probably put one of those into the new camper that we are going to be converting over the next few months, and stuff like that. My sister has a camper as well. We'll probably put one in there, just because the electrical system that came in her camper was definitely not up to the standards that we'd like to see in a camper. So yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go back to these guys with this active balancer and see what they say. I haven't had much luck with them. They sent me replacements, which is quite handy, but it's not ideal to have another one that's not working. So I'm just going to check the voltage on this battery here, see how close we are. .5 volts. So this BMS is quite handy because it has, so BMS, in case anyone doesn't know, it's this red thing here. It's a battery management system. So basically what this is designed for is to keep all of these cells at a sort of constant voltage, and it has a Bluetooth dongle, so this thing here that's sticking out, and it allows you to connect to it with your phone. So it's quite handy just to be able to see what's going on and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I posted the giveaway prize, so that ended on Saturday. So yeah, I was pretty stoked. Some guys down in Dublin got that. So they have a beautiful van actually. If you go over onto Instagram and find them, I think, I'm trying to remember, Vanlife Escape is their name. They've built out over the last couple of years, beautiful van. I think it's in a Transit or a Sprinter, something like that. But really cool folk. In their van, they have like a porcelain sink in their van, and just like beautiful worktops. They've done a great job converting that van, and I think they've done it all themselves as well. But yeah, they've done a really good job. They're just about to hit the road with it. They've just been waiting for the lockdown over in Ireland to lift. But yeah, I was pretty stoked that they got it because it'll go well with their van. They're also putting a lithium system into their van, so I was even more chuffed with that. So like, couldn't have gone to some better people. We might see them up here in Northern Ireland at some stage. I'll have to see if we can get together. That'd be pretty cool. Nice work. I was chatting to a guy today who has been asking us for some advice on putting together an off-grid power system for a CCTV camera operation. So I don't know exactly what it must be like job sites or something like that, I suppose. But he wanted an off-grid solution to be able to charge So I was studying a little bit today just in terms of the like light or usable light, shall we say. That's often the terminology that's used. Because if you take like the Midwest in the US, for example, they get an average number of hours, which is an average of 6 hours of usable light across the whole year. So you can see why or how solar would be so good and popular and effective in that sort of area. Whereas in Ireland, across the whole year, when you take the factor in the winter and the short days and stuff like that, we average just under 4 hours of usable light in Ireland. And it just shows you how, like, you come to, like, and the variation is huge. So you go, like, middle of winter, middle of December, shortest days of the year, usually it's the greyest and the coldest, etc., etc. The average number of hours of usable light in December is like 2 hours per day. And then you go to, like, the middle of summer, July, the longest days of the year, and the average number of hours of usable light is like just over 7 hours. So it's such a huge variation across the whole year. But it just shows you how it just highlights how effective solar panels are in Ireland in the summer, but when it comes to winter, they're really inefficient and just don't get enough light. So this guy was trying to work out, so he can run his CCTV system on a single lead acid battery that he said he can run for like 2 days on that. I can't remember he didn't tell me the wattage of his system, but it could run about 2 days on a single battery, and he would charge it just with a generator or just plug it into mains when he's there during the day and stuff like that. So I assume that it must be a job site or something where they have a generator or something like that. So I was just giving him some tips, and so we worked out that if he was to have 2 batteries, lead acid batteries, that he could run the system on, and then put 3 solar panels, 160 watt panels with a good MPPT charger, he would just be on the limit, and it would actually be fairly risky in the winter as to whether he could charge that up. So with that setup, he could basically charge his batteries up in about 3.5 hours. So obviously when it comes to the middle of December, it would be quite risky. Potentially you wouldn't actually even charge up that battery system in a single day if he didn't get enough light. And that's where when you get into that situation, you basically have one of 2 choices. Either you go down the route of you just need to be able to monitor it more, and you just need to keep an eye on it. So if you have consecutive days where it's grey and dark and not a lot of sunlight, then potentially you can't actually your batteries aren't going to recharge. So that's the one option, is just having that human element of monitoring it a bit more. And the other option is that you size up your battery bank so that you can go longer without sunlight. But then when you size up your battery bank, you then need to size up your solar system so that when you do get sunlight, you can then catch up fast and charge those batteries fast. And so he was basically looking at potentially he would need to go for like 3 or 4 batteries, which would then mean that he could potentially go a whole week without actually even having to charge those batteries. But obviously the risk there is that if he goes like a week with no sunlight, then he's going to need a really good system that can charge, a really good solar system that can charge those 3 or 4 batteries up in the space of a couple of hours. If you work on the basis that in December in Ireland you get 2 hours of usable light on average per day. So yeah, it was just an interesting exercise going through that, because we've always known, and just through using our vans, that the solar just isn't that efficient in the winter because of how little sunlight we have. Our days are so short. A lot of people don't realize, and especially here in Northern Ireland where we're so far north compared to even like the south of England, like in the shortest day in Northern Ireland in the winter, the sun rises at like 8:45 or 8:50 in the morning and sets at like 3:40, 3:45 in the afternoon, something like that. And then you go to like the summer, and your earliest sunrise I think is like 4:15 in the morning, and then the sun sets at like 10:54 or something like that in the evening. So you just have this huge variation. So you can kind of see how much of a difference it makes in terms of how efficient solar is. And obviously where the sun is makes a big difference as well, because obviously in the winter the sun's really flat close to the horizon, and in the summer it's much more it's much higher in the sky. Obviously nowhere near as high in the sky as it would be like on the equator or something like that, but it is much higher in the summer anyway. Yeah, I think we're going to call it there, guys. It's been nearly 25 minutes here now. So I'm going to crack on with some stuff here. But yeah, thanks for joining in on our live tonight. If you're interested in seeing the paper and the study that we've done over the last couple of weeks on the comparison of lead acid versus lithium, then check out the link in our bio. We've got the video that we did there. We did along, it's like 25 minutes, really in-depth video into that conversation and just how that all looks. The numbers are really interesting. It just shows you how cost effective lithium is over the course of like a 10-year span. So yeah, I'd love you to check that out if you're interested, but otherwise thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.